Hi, I'm Corey with Corey's Vintage Corner. I like to upcycle or repurpose items and bring new life to them. Today I'm going to make some really interesting book clocks out of faux book keepsake boxes. I found these keepsake boxes at estate sales and at thrift stores from about $2 to $4. I'm only going to be using 3 of these boxes today. This first book, I decided to use decoupage. I did a base coat in DIY White Swan. Just gave it a base coat, not too full coverage. Now I'm lining up the decoupage paper to the binding, but I'm making sure that I'm not hitting that crease. I don't want it to fold over and then tear the paper later on. Now I've cut and given myself about 1 inch on the outside edges so that those can be folded over onto the inside of the book cover. I'm using Mod Podge. You want to be pretty generous with your Mod Podge on here, but you want to make sure that it's smoothed out and just using a plain chip brush to do that. Now I've lined up the paper on the binding on that crease just outside of it, and try to smooth out the paper the best that you can. Now the wrinkles, if there's some, we're going to be distressing later, so it won't make too big of a deal there. Now I'm just going to smooth out these edges and then fold them over and use the Mod Podge there to glue those down. Now I've cut the corners so that they don't get bulky when they're getting folded over. Don't worry about the excess that's on here because we'll end up using a razor knife to come back in and cut those down. This Mod Podge paper I actually got at the Basket Market, which is a Hobby Lobby discount store. So I was pretty lucky and came across this for $1, and it's a pretty good size package. Now I'm using the DIY Old 57 to paint the binding on this. The DIY is clay-based. It's great coverage that you get, but I wasn't too concerned about getting full coverage on here because I know that I'm going to go back later and distress this. So now it's all painted, and I'm going to go in once it's dry and use a sanding block. It's about a 220 is what I'm going to be using because I want to make sure that I'm able to get this all distressed. You may be hearing the dog next door as we're going along with this, but once I'm finished doing this and distressing it, I'm going to go back in. I noticed there's a piece here that the paper actually came off. Lucky enough, this Old 57, it kind of blended in pretty good, but I took my heat gun, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing, but I did that, and then just kind of sanded over it to make it smooth. Then I'm going in and just getting that inside binding lip. Now I just cleaned up all of the dust from sanding, and we're going to go ahead and do a real good cover of Mod Podge just to seal it all in, make sure everything's good. You want to get a good even coverage, but at the same time try to not get the clumpy, streak marks if you can. Makes it look a little bit more finished and better that way. Make sure too that you go in and you seal those inside lips. You're going to want to make sure that those are all sealed on there too. Our next one, I didn't show the painting, but I painted in a French millinery, which is also DIY paint. And I'm using the IOD transfer, the English Trois. And I love this transfer. They're really easy to use. I just kind of went again with that crease, made sure that I was outside of that so it didn't mess up the transfer. And it has really good grid lines that you can follow with. You just set this on, press it down, and then there's a tool that they give you that you can use that is going to help you to rub the transfer in. Now, it's pretty easy to use and to get the transfers to come free from this. It'll start getting kind of cloudy looking, and you know that it's coming free. And then you can lift up. Now, some of these smaller details on this transfer are a little more difficult. So if you lift up and part of it doesn't adhere to the book, you can just set the plastic back down and then rub over it again, and it'll go right back on. Now, I cut this one a little bit longer. I was concerned about not having, of cutting it too short. So it was easy just to go back in and cut that strip off. And then you want to go ahead and burnish that afterwards to set that transfer in. Now again, I'm taking the 220 sandpaper just to distress it, and it also gets rid of, there's a little bit of a kind of a haze on the outside of the pictures on the transfer, and that helps to blend that in. This last book, I used an IOD paper clay and a mold, and then I'm using Water Lily. It's another DIY paint, and painting it. I like this DIY paint because if you can really tell in this one, it gets really good coverage. So I'm just being careful around the paper clay mold that I've put on here. I used E6000 to adhere it to the book and let it dry before I started painting somewhat. But you will see I didn't let it dry quite enough here in a minute because I had a little mishap, but I will definitely show you how I fixed that. So I decided to use white wax. Again, it's DIY. It's almost kind of like whipping cream, like a thick whipping cream when you put it on. And it goes into the details really well to where it'll pop a little bit when I'm done. Problem I had was there's a corner here that kind of breaks off when I go to wipe it. You'll see there's the corner I found. So what I did was I used some E6000 and just put some down there and put it back on. You can't even tell that it happened once I've completed all of the white wax on here. Wanted to use the white wax because, like I said, it gives the detail in that clay mold. But then also when I did that, I realized that the rest of the book just didn't quite look right. With that, so I decided to do the entire book and just to wipe it back. But I was extra careful when I went back around this mold after I had that break off on me earlier. Once I'd done that, I realized that it was just too stark white, so I decided to use some of the DIY black wax, and I used one of my JRV small stencils brushes that I have just to go around and give a little bit of dimension to it and a little shadow. Then I just took a lint-free shop towel and kind of wiped it back some, just to leave it not so stark on there. And then I'll also take some of that black wax now and put it along in the creases there. I just used the shop towel to do it lightly, and then used it on the corners there. Just age the book. Now I've got my husband helping me with the clock. I'm not very good with these clocks, so what he did was put the clocks together for me. Show you in this next one how he did this. So you've got your clock mechanism. You're going to drill a hole in this. Now with the clay, we decided to put a piece of tape on there for less likely to break that mold. Now just pop that in the back there. Once you've done that, you'll take these parts it comes with, and it's a little washer. Put the washer, and then there's a nut there that you're going to screw on there, and you tightened it down pretty good. And then once you've done that, you'll put your hour hand down, and then you'll put your minute hand, and then your second hand, and the second hand has a little button on it that you can press on there. Then you can get your battery in there, and it's good to go. Again, we just did the same thing on this here. I did the measuring, if you can tell there. He always tells me, you tell me where you want me to put it, and I'll do it. So, again, he's putting in the clock for us here. All of the parts and the products that we've used in this, I'll have them listed in the description box down below. Thank you for sticking around. So what did you think? Is this something that you would like to try, or do you have another idea for these keepsake boxes? You can find these boxes that we've turned into clocks on our website at corysvintagecorner.com, or you can find them in our booth at Dusty Roads Marketplace. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.